What do you do if you're trying to unseat the undisputed champ for duty pistols in the LE market? Glock has quite literally cornered the LE duty market pistol for a very, very long time. And for good reason, right? Glock obviously makes a really great pistol. They're ultra reliable, well proven, well documented as being proven. They've been trusted all over the world, and thousands upon thousands of police officers carry the Glock pistol. Now this is the Glock 45. This is also the Koa model. But with that being said, I know there's other brands out there that are also widespread and proven in the LE market. Those two pistols were probably like the 320, which I know there's been some issues, that people have reported recently with that. But then you also have the Smith & Wesson M&P series. Both those pistols have now really been ingratiated and taken up a large market share from Glock in the LE market. So what about two other options, and how do they perform versus the Glock? So the Springfield Echelon, the full-size 4.5-inch gun, and then the full-size CZ P10F. Out of these three guns, which one's the best? And that's arguably what we're gonna help you decide today. So I'm gonna talk quite a bit about these things. I'll have some shooting footage and things like that so you can see how they perform. But for the most part, I've shot all of these guns, and I can tell you that they all shoot nearly identical due to how they're designed. Now the bore axis on every single one of these is low. To say one's higher than the next one, you're really starting to split some hairs here, right? Cost-wise, they're relatively the same, with the exception the CZ P10F is arguably about $200 cheaper than both of the other two pistols. Now, as a setup, right, I think that you really can't beat the overall value of the 45, a 47, with the Aimpoint Koa on here, and how it comes with the sights, that co-witness and all that. Like as this sits here, 980 bucks, right? Is how much I paid for it. The CZ, 400 bucks for the gun, and then about 350 for the sight. And like I said, in a previous video with the CZ here, I don't really care for the sight, so there are other options, but a sight and the gun itself will probably get you close to about like 850, I would say, depending on the sight that you decide to choose. And then you go over here to the Springfield Echelon. We were one of the first people to review this. Obviously they sent us one, and then we bought two other ones outside of that because I liked it and a buddy of mine really likes it as well. So with this pistol, with the Echelon series, it's a really nice gun. I think Springfield did a great job, and I really think that the P10's been out for a while, right? So if it was really gonna get picked up wholeheartedly by the LE market, it probably would have happened by now, and it just hasn't. The Echelon is still fairly new to the game, and I think you give it some more time, and especially with some of the stuff, like I said, the folks that are complaining about SIG at the moment, the Echelon is a great option, right? It has the central operating group, or COG, which is like an FCU you can take in and out of the grip and change it out, versus the other two guns don't have that. So you can do that. And then like this gun here, as you see it sitting here, I was online last night just to kind of check to see how much Echelon's going for nowadays. You could find them for 600 bucks, I would say. And then the MPS I have on here, I think I paid like 360. So, with that being said, you're looking at a price that's very comparable to the Glock. But what I'll tell you is that how this mounts and how this sits in here, yeah, I know I beat the shit out of it, to be frank, and I broke it in a video. I was really hard on it. Likelihood somebody else does that, not very likely, but it's a great setup. So I have two, obviously enclosed emitter red dot sights here on the table. And the way that these all work, mounting systems and things like that, let's say universal wise, the Echelon takes the cake. I think it has the absolute best optics mounting system outside of like a Shadow Systems, which is very similar to where you can put multiple optics on here without really needing to go buy anything. Just right out of the box, mount whatever you want on here. Now you do have to get a plate if you want to run an Acro or an MPS like I have, but the plate, I got it from Springfield in literally like 2 days and paid 40 bucks for it. It fits well and it looks good. So you can do that. You still get a good co-witness with the very nice iron sights. I think it also, so we'll just stay on the Echelon here for a second, right? The Echelon series of pistols also has the best slide serrations out of these three pistols. And how they're designed, they kind of like a V-notch that comes back, and how you grip it in order to actually, let's say, maybe do a press check or rack it from the front of the gun, and then the lip in the rear, if you're grabbing it with the sight, is very easy to do as well. So that's two things right out of the gate that I can tell you that the Springfield Echelon does better than the other two pistols, right? So it's got a better optics mounting system, and on top of that, the slide serrations on it are better as well. Now, of course, we'll talk about triggers, right? So I've checked all these triggers. Every single one of them breaks between 4.5 to like 4.7 pounds. So they're all about 4.5 pound triggers. You're splitting hairs, right? The overall feel on the Echelon is probably the best, right? I think the trigger and how it feels, like the Glock one is the Glock, you know, the little dangle here in the middle, right? When you actually push the trigger or you're pulling on it, you can really feel that on your trigger finger. You don't feel that on the Echelon whatsoever. And then really, I think on the CZ P10F, it's the same thing. You can feel it on your trigger finger, but it's a flatter design like the Echelon. They have very similar triggers, except what I'll tell you is that because the take-up is so light on the Echelon, almost like a PDP, and how it breaks is, it just feels better, right? It's got a shorter reset as well. Not as audible as the other two, but shorter. And then on top of it, you could take the whole operating group out of here and put it in something like a Mischief Machine or an Icarus Precision grip module. So the other two, you obviously can't do that. So with that being said, Echelon has 3 things so far right now that, you know, objectively, you can't really argue with. Having the better optics cut, having better slide serrations, and having a better trigger, and how it feels with a, you know, let's say similar pull weight as the others, you know, you can't really argue those things, right? So we'll have to start getting into some other stuff. Accuracy wise, people who accuracy test striker fire guns without a bag and without trying to find the like tangibles or variables like you would find with a precision bolt gun or an AR, whatever it might be, where you find the ammo that gun shoots the best, and then you say it's accurate with that ammo, right? That's across the board for rifles. But for some reason, other content creators and YouTubers like myself will take pistols, they'll shoot, you know, whatever ammo they decide to choose that day, and they'll be like, oh, well, the practical accuracy with this ammo and this gun is better than this one. Well, you tried one ammo and you didn't, let's say, bag it, you didn't put it in a ransom rest, you didn't do any of the above. So doing that and doing accuracy test is dumb, to be frank, right? So for me, when I shoot pistols, if they hit where I want them to shoot or want them to hit, right? Every time I pull the trigger, whatever it is, and accuracy going out, let's say 50 yards on a steel plate and making torso hits or headshots, whatever it might be, if they hit where I'm wanting them to hit, they're accurate enough for me. Arguably, you're not gonna outshoot the overall accuracy potential of a handgun. It's very, very difficult to do. Most shooters can't do it. So to be fair, all of these shoot well. I haven't seen or noticed any issues with accuracy with both hollow points and with FMJ, you know, round nose flat point, whatever it be, they all seem to shoot pretty darn well. So at least beyond my expectations whenever it comes to me actually trying to hit the spots on the target or steel. So with all that being said, grip textures wise, I probably prefer the CZ P10F's grip textures the most. I wish that they would come up a little higher here on the grip and it wasn't bare, but I like how aggressive they are. Now, with that being said, a lot of folks have complained about how aggressive the grip textures are on the CZ, and they don't like that. Now, personally, we're talking about duty pistols, so I want the grip textures to be absolutely as aggressive as possible. If it was like a cheese grater like you see on some like the Atlas, you know, 2011s, I'd like that. I think it's better that way. Personal preference, but like I said, I like how aggressive it is, and I like how this pistol feels in my hand more so than the old, you know, chunky Glock or blocky Glock, like people say. And the Echelon feels good, but the grip textures themselves, although they feel good as you like bite into them, and they're not bad like carrying it or anything like that, I do wish they were more aggressive. Okay, so they're all right. Now, when we're talking about the grips, all 3 of these pistols have like we'll call it a slight bevel job on the magwell, right? The Echelons is the worst. Okay, that's pretty, to be fair, it's pretty obvious when I look at these 3 pistols. There's just not much to it, and I don't really care for it, and I've reloaded the Echelon a lot. The Glocks, easily the best. The funnel that they did on the Gen 5 Glock is actually pretty good for having no magwell. I really can't complain, and I think the mags in there and all how that fits pretty darn good. Now, breaking my grip, because these grips are very similar in all these pistols, I mean, I would probably say the P10F is probably the easiest for me to actually depress the magazine release and not have to change my grip. I do have to slightly do it. It's a little bit more of like a forceful action here on the Echelon. And then it is, although it is ambi. I mean, you don't have to swap it around. Of course, the Glock and the P10F, you can move them around and decide which one you want to do. So we've covered all of those bases, right? The Glock has the standard Glock key for mounting a light up here. I do have the string light TLR1 HLX, that's their newest light. Pick rail on the CZ and a pick rail on the Echelon. I prefer the pick rail. However, if you're picking a duty light, I really don't give a shit, right? Just put whatever light you want on there. All lights come with, whether pick rail or 1913 universal or a Glock key. Put it on there and just leave it on there and quit worrying about it. So like all that stuff's good. Undercut though, the Echelon has the best undercut on the trigger guard. It fits very nice, especially with a two-handed grip. On the bottom side of the let's say the trigger guard here, it's textured, and you can really feel that with your support hand when you come up and you lock into the gun. And then it has little ramps here on the sides of the gun for both left and right-handed shooters. More so, okay, this has an actual takedown lever. You don't need to pull the trigger to ultimately take this gun down, versus the other two. A lot of companies, when they came out, like the Smith & Wesson, when they came out to try and gather up that LE market, they purposely went away from having to pull the trigger to break the gun down because they were worried, you know, when the Glock came out, about how that was actually designed and how that would be. So it's really great to see all the improvements that the Echelon has. I think it has a good contour in the grip, and you can also change them out for different sizes. You know, even like I said, this doesn't have the best, you know, magwell or funnel at the bottom. It doesn't have the best textures, but it does have a good overall design to it and what they thought of with everything like that. So I have to also give some kudos to the Echelon for how they've designed the grip, right? Now, with all of these pistols, the irony behind this is not a single one of these is like American, right? So the Echelon is designed and made by HS Product. CZ is obviously not an American company, and Glock, not an American company either, right? So a lot of times when folks are like, oh, well, the HS Product is, you know, it's made by somebody else, it's not a Springfield. Okay, well, neither is Glock, right? It's not an American product, and neither is the CZ, but I can honestly care less. These three pistols are all reliable guns. The Echelon has more than proven it to me that how reliable of a pistol it can be, and I think it's a really great option. Glock has been around and stood the test of time, and it's well proven in the LE market. Regardless of the new kids on the block that come out, it hasn't went anywhere. I think the COA system is great. And as such, with all of these pistols, like I said, having shot them and how they perform, and they all have, you know, ambi slice up slide releases, the triggers are good, they all shoot good, they're all, you know, as accurate as I need them to be. It's pretty hard, though, not, you know, I'd probably say that the CZ comes in third. Not because it's bad or any of the above, right? I think it's a really great pistol. I just think that there's some things about the CZ, like with the slide serrations and then the optics system on here, and then also too, like trying to find, let's say, additional magazines and things like that. It's not going to be as readily available or as easy to find as a Springfield Echelon, or especially as a Glock. And if you're an LE or a police officer, you need a bunch of mags, right? So this comes with 3 magazines. The Echelon comes with 2, and the CZ comes with 2. So I think it's great that these come with 3 mags. You can change out the back straps. Now, out of these 3 pistols, I do still tend to get slide bite on the Glock, but it does shoot good, and you know, the marksman barrel that's on here is a good barrel. I think they do a great job. So the point that I'm going to get at here is that all 3 of these guns are great pistols. But if you're going to really decide between the 3 of these ones, which one I think is ultimately the best, it's really hard to not say that the Echelon has really shaken up the game. Now, granted, it has not gotten the widespread, you know, conversion to LE or anything like you saw 320s get, but I think that Springfield, given time and people testing these out, chances are it's probably going to start to soak up more of that market and really challenge Glock, because Glock's not going anywhere. It hasn't yet, and you've seen agencies now go back to Glock after switching. So they're reliable. Which one's better? I don't know. I probably prefer the Echelon personally, right? Do I know that it's better? That's really hard to say. You know, I think that they're both great pistols. I would probably tell you or push you towards getting an Echelon before I would say, you know, get a Glock. Now, granted, super simple to work on. You know, there's Glock armors all over the country. You can get all the parts you need, no issues. So if you're somebody that lives in a more rural area, out in the mountains, whatever it might be, you don't have stores close to you, I would tell you to get the Glock, right? If you're somebody that can easily get parts because you live in the city, whatever it might be, and you know, maybe in the event you break something, I recommend the Echelon. The P10, is probably the hardest to find anything aftermarket related at any store, whether it's parts, you know, optics plates, magazines, whatever it would be. It's definitely not as easy to find as these two. So therefore, I will steer you towards the Echelon as my #1 pick, with the Glock coming in at like a 1.5, right? So it's barely second place, but it is a good pistol. And I think that really what separates this pistol and makes this better versus the MOS is I really like the Aimpoint Co-on here. And I think it's a really great sight. But guys, these are my, let's say, 3 picks. If I'm not going, you know, HK, FN, some of the other ones already have big, you know, contracts, and trying to take down the Glock. The Echelon is a great option. The CZ-P10F is a great option if you don't have much money, you're looking to get an LE, and you maybe work for a smaller department that's not going to provide you with anything. Save your money, get the CZ-P10F. You're somebody that wants to challenge or just have something a little different than the Glock, I think you can't go wrong with the Springfield Echelon. But if you disagree with me, you have a difference of opinion, or you think there's a better option than what I've laid out here, or, you know, Glock's, you know, end all be all for you, let me know in the comment section below.